Well, this is an extraordinary video. If you're listening on the radio, British tourists watched on in horror as migrants invaded a resort in Spain, leading to a fight which left one person dead. A guest in the hotel called Joseph shared this clip exclusively with the Daily Mail. Have a look.
Well, we can see on that picture a number of migrants seen jumping off a boat, swimming onto the beach before they run through the hotel's courtyard to get to the other side of the property. And then this fatal fight allegedly broke out between the men that had crossed on the boat. And quite a frightening experience, I think, for the hotel residents.
Yeah, but it just shows, doesn't it, that we think we've got a problem here. This is pretty Europe-wide. I mean, and we haven't seen that happen here yet.
No, I mean, people in Kent do report migrants turning up on the beaches, but of course, most of the time, our border forces do actually pick them up in the channel and bring them at least so that they can be registered.
And really, another problem for this government and for people living in Kent, border force staff are balloting to go on industrial action.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean...
More strikes?
Yeah, and who will operate the Uber service for the migrants then?
Well, quite.
The Royal Navy?
Quite. Well, they tried that very briefly, didn't they? But it was not popular with the Royal Navy, probably very popular with the population. Well, we're joined now by migration and security expert Henry Bolton. Henry, good morning. These are quite worrying pictures from the south coast of Spain. It really does emphasise that this is a Europe-wide problem, doesn't it?
It does, Miriam. And I've long said that one of the things that we need to get better at is working with other countries in the European region to try and address the problem more strategically. We're working with the French, but the French, as we know, I mean, we can recall the Brexit campaign in which we were saying we want to take back control of our borders. We haven't done that, so it's quite obvious we haven't done that. But one of the reasons that was an important part of the campaign is because Brussels, the European Union, the European Commission, has a significant say on how the external borders of the European Union are managed and run, how the security is run and so on. And those countries in the European Union who are on the sort of on the edge of the Union are in a constant struggle with the European Commission to go forward. So, instead of working just with the French, who are limited in that way as to how they can respond, we need to be working with all European allies and friends, because it is a Europe-wide, in fact, it's beyond Europe problem, and we need to be securing Europe as the continent of Europe, not just the UK. And that then acts as a filter for the channel. And what you were just saying, the footage that you just showed, I myself have twice come across people who've very obviously just landed by boat on the shores of Kent. I live down in Kent, near Folkestone, and they've been up on the hills above Kent in groups, in one case of about 8 and the other case of about a dozen. They're quite clearly trying to orientate themselves. You ring 999, there's an eventual response, but far too late because they've all disappeared into the woods. Now, that's a little time ago, and that problem has reduced because there are more interceptions in the channel, which means that we're able to sort of track these people a little bit better. But I have no doubt that people are still arriving that aren't interdicted by border force. So there is a problem, and all it takes, frankly, I mean, a lot of these people come from societies where violence is commonplace. They've grown up with it, and you can look at why that may be. You can go into all of that, but there is that does not alleviate the risk that there is to members of the public confronting these individuals, because if these individuals feel that they're cornered, they may well fight, they may well be armed with knives or whatever. They can cause injury, and they will be a great deal more aggressive than your average member of the public in the UK. So there is a problem there, and there is a threat to public safety. There's a raft of these issues, but your main point is absolutely valid. This is a Europe-wide problem. It is not just the European Union that needs to deal with this. It is all of the nations of continental Europe. This is a problem coming from Africa and from the Far East and from the Near East and from areas of Central Asia and so on. So we've got to work together on it. And I've always argued that the UK, outside the European Union, would be in a position, if we had any strategic vision and acumen here, to actually initiate this and take the lead on it. In the European Union, we wouldn't be able to, because we'd have to defer to the coordinating guidance of the European Commission.
Well, Henry, let me interrupt you there. What would you propose that we do to take that strategic lead when we've got a story on the front page of the Sun today, an Afghan refugee who crossed the Channel illegally, been given asylum here. He's gone on holiday to Afghanistan, which he fled because of persecution for 2 months. I mean, the system is descending into farce and chaos. So what strategic thing should the Home Office or Border Force be doing?
In a sense, this is not a Home Office or Border Force problem strategically. It is a whole of government problem. Right. Intelligence services, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the Ministry of Defence, all need to be engaged on this. Now, when I've worked with other countries to develop national border strategies, to really look at this strategically, it has required a coordinating body across government. In every case, I've written or helped 14 countries to write national strategies. In all but one case, we established a national borders coordinator who was empowered by the very highest level in and most of them were presidential governments, and by presidential decree, a national borders coordinator was appointed with the authority from the president to coordinate all arms of government, all branches of government, from local government all the way through up to major departments such as defence and home affairs, to coordinate all of that, to develop a national strategy. And every country is slightly different. The dynamics it faces, the threats it faces in terms of its borders are all slightly different. They're regional, they're local. And so do a thorough assessment of that and respond. Now, of course, there are things that we can do in the meantime. And, first of all, we ought to be sitting down with Europeans and say, initiate it, hold a conference in London and say, right, people will say, well, it's no good talking about it. But at that level, we have to talk about how we're going to start cooperating on this. There is a framework in the OSCE, it's in the Organisation of Security. There are various existing platforms that we can use, is the bottom line. We are failing to use it because our Foreign Office and our government is simply not aware of it ever since Tony Blair brought in mobility in the civil service, which means nobody's in the job long enough to actually understand what that job entails and what the facilities are out there. I'll give you a quick example because you'll be limited on time, I'm sure, but there is something called the OSCE Border Security and Management Contact Point Network. Now, when I set that up, it was 41 countries then. Every country, bar the UK, sent the chief executive or a director from its various border agencies, including the Vatican, to sit around the table and work out common strategies to deal with 21st century threats of this nature. The UK sent a desk officer from the Foreign Office, a junior desk officer who was basically a note taker, had no authority or knowledge or it wasn't simply high enough in the food chain, that's not their fault, to engage in serious conversation. They just they weren't equipped to do it. And they didn't have any decision-making ability or reach back to ministers back in the UK. So you're on a failing to absolutely nothing. You're heading for nothing when you're responding in that way. So there's all of that. I mean, I could talk forever. Border Force needs
just briefly on that, Henry. Which government was that under when they didn't take this initiative seriously and sent a junior desk officer? Was it under the Tories or this lot? That
was 2007 or 8, I think.
Blair.
Yes.
And he created a lot of this in the first place.
He absolutely did. He was the one who brought it, who I think he and then followed up by Brown devastated the civil service and meant that we lost the expertise and the experience to do things like this and to think strategically. He's the one who opened the floodgates to immigration. Particularly, we've got a problem still with Albanian organised crime, which he was told. I know he was told because I was part of the people I was one of the people consulted on it. He was told what the implications of opening the doors to Albanian refugees from the Balkans would be in terms of organised crime. That was ignored. He did it, and then we've got these sort of issues as well. Another story about which I think you covered earlier about paying people to leave the UK. That was a scheme brought in by Tony Blair as well. So, all of this, some of it, if I'm honest, in the context of the time, made a little bit of sense. But again, it was poor decision making with little to no strategic foresight. And that is the number one problem, frankly, not just in borders and immigration, but in healthcare, in education, in defence. This government and the previous governments for the last two, maybe 3 decades have failed to exercise any degree of strategic foresight or strategic planning. And we're paying the price for it now. I would suggest, they're not going to bring me in. I'm the former leader of UKIP. The Labour government's not going to bring me in to help. I'm sure I will do. I'll help if they ask. And I've offered, but no response. But I would say get in strategic and operational planners from the armed forces to actually look at this strategically. Not how do we deal with the boats, but deal with everything. How do we join government up here? How do we unify all of the efforts of every single branch of government at the local and national level to deliver on a set of strategic objectives in terms of securing our borders?
Henry, we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. But Henry Bolton, thank you so much for your time this morning, and definitely food for thought.
And all of this goes back to that wretched Tony Blair.